Welcome back to Island Bike Life. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 2019 Orbea Rallon. I picked this particular bike up during my trip down in Sedona from Trail.sports. They offer Orbea, Yeti, and a few other great brands, so if you're looking for a demo bike on your trip down in and around Sedona, make sure you stop in and check the guys out. They were super helpful and very knowledgeable. For the testing, I was able to take the Rallon on a good variety of trails, including some more classic cross-country, general trail riding, and some downhill that consisted more of technical downhill versus all-out speed and flow trails, though there was a little bit of that. If you don't know much about the Orbea Rallon, I wouldn't be terribly surprised, especially here in the Pacific Northwest and Vancouver Island. There's not very many of these around whatsoever. The only dealer on the island that I'm aware of is Couch and Cycles down in Duncan. But this particular bike was pretty well appointed. It is the Rallon M10 i9 build, which is kind of the middle of the road. You can buy these off the shelf or through their MyO program. You can customize a few of the part lists, but more importantly, you can really make a one-off bike, customizing your colorway and an almost infinite number of combinations, including the primary, secondary colors, and some of the text and decals that are on the bikes as well. This bike was a size large, and the geometry is pretty progressive and kind of matches that newer style of a little bit longer and a little bit slacker. For me, at 6'1", 6'2", roughly, with a 33-inch inseam, I found this large fit me just about perfectly. It was very comfortable when pedaling and in general trail riding and descent situations. I was able to move around the bike no problem whatsoever. Like I said, the build was the middle of the road M10 build, and for the money you're gonna pay, it really is pretty well appointed. What you're gonna get for the price, of course, is a full carbon bike, both the front and the rear triangle. It comes with a 160 mil fork and 150 mils of travel in the rear. It's going to be a DPX2 factory paired to a Fox 36 float performance up front, which was in the Fit 4 configuration, not the Grip 2. The drivetrain itself is full Eagle, of course, just like most bikes these days, and is a mix between GX and XO1. The only major XO1 component is the rear derailleur, of course, and the crankset is the SRAM Descent. The wheels are DT Swiss E1900s with pretty good hub pairings, as well as Minion DHF and an aggressor in the rear. I was a little bit surprised to see the bike spec'd with Shimano XT brakes, and I haven't ridden them in quite some time, but after my time on this bike, I remembered why everybody loves them so much. They really do perform excellently. The rest of the cockpit is finished off by a race face bar and stem and dropper post option. Like I say, the build kit on this bike does seem to match that middle of the road build kit for a bike, and the price is somewhat reflective of what the quality of the parts that are going to be on it. When it came down to climbing on the Rallon, I was pretty surprised. I haven't ridden the DPX2 in a little while, and I forgot how much I actually like it in a climbing position. I left it open all the time, even when I was doing general trail and cross-country riding. Orbea has done a great job of balancing having a rather lively bike when descending, but not an overly soft pedaling platform for a bike that is clearly meant for more enduro or enduro racing type situations. When pedaling in cross-country or trail environments, I never felt that I was bogged down by an excessive amount of pedal bob. The anti-squat was set up really quite nicely, and over the long periods that I did have on this bike in a lot of heavy pedal scenarios, I never felt that I was held back whatsoever. The other area that surprised me was the general trail riding on this thing. I'm talking about kind of traversing areas, going up and down, but not focused necessarily on one or the other. Sedona, if you've never ridden there, is very much like this, and certainly is not an area where you require a bike with such high amounts of travel, 160, 150. It just doesn't require it. However, because the bike is very responsive and is very lively and fun, this type of riding actually was quite enjoyable. There's lots of little areas in Sedona where you do short little pedals up and you get rewarded with a fairly substantial downhill, though it's nothing crazy long or even all that difficult. But the Rallon, I found, had pretty good trail manners. It hugged the trail really nice. The DPX2 and the Fox 36 up front did a great job to keep the bike well mannered and really quite fun on the trail. It's probably one of the funner bikes that I've been on in this type of environment, and you know what? For around here on Vancouver Island, even though there is loads of travel, I could see this one being an all-day, pretty long, epic bike ride on any riding network we have up here in the Pacific Northwest. As for the descending, I really wasn't surprised here. Now, like I said, in fairness, I didn't have any crazy long 15, 20-minute descents with huge, massive drops or jumps that I, of course, would struggle with. But what I did encounter, or the time that I did have in that sort of descending environment, the Rallon, of course, didn't let me down. It has loads of travel. The geometry on this bike with its really slack head tube right around that 65 degrees, depending on what position you have the flip chip in, and the long wheelbase and that really nice reach for the size large. The bike was really stable. It moved through its travel no problem. It sucked up any little bump that I encountered or any sort of natural rock drop or roll that you encounter time and time again in Sedona. Where I was really happy with this bike was on trails like Hangover, where you get really steep and it's kind of slow going. It's not fast, but it's a technical downhill. The length of the bike and the composure on the bike really gave me a lot of confidence to try to take on some lines that perhaps on another bike I might not have that same confidence or feeling of the ability to overcome an area of riding that really was beyond what I thought my current riding skill was. I attribute a lot of that to the descending prowess of the Rallon. It really was quite excellent, and my only real regret is that I wasn't able to ride it in a more aggressive or a more sort of extended and faster speed downhill scenario, because I think it would absolutely just shred. And I'd love to have the opportunity to get on another one on some of my local trails here that I know a lot better. When you look at the comparison category for the Rallon, it definitely has that boutique brand price tag that is going to be associated to it. This is not a cheap bike. It's kind of in that same realm as your Yeti and Santa Cruz type bikes with the same sort of build kit. You're going to pay for the boutique brand, but also the high quality of the bike. Other than Santa Cruz, I would say that this Orbea has probably the highest level of attention to detail, and the overall finish of the bike really was top notch. I was absolutely blown away by the carbon layup and the way that it looked, the lines on it, and just the overall feeling of being a well-made product. And for me, really does justify the price. It is a little bit unfortunate given the scope and the size of Orbea as a brand as a whole. They are really big. They're like Trek and Specialized in the European market. But over here, you just don't see them that often. And because of that, you pay a little bit more. So what are some of my final thoughts on the 2019 Orbea Rallon? Well, this is Orbea's Enduro bike. And you can tell the geometry on it, slack, head tube, steep C-tube, really long wheelbase, nice roomy cockpit with the reach and stack numbers that are on this thing, and the build kit to support it. It descends, at least from what I can tell in the environments that I had it on, extremely well. And in longer, even more technical or fast descents, I have absolutely no doubt that this thing would shine and probably score some very, very high marks. General trail riding, really fun, playful, and responsive bike, and pedals pretty well in a cross-country or just getting around type of scenario. And so who might this be for? Well, like most bikes with this amount of travel here on Vancouver Island, you're probably not going to need that much. But if you have it, will it be fun? And the short answer to that is yes, absolutely it will be. This would be a bike that I would absolutely recommend. And out of all the bikes that I've demoed very recently, I would say that the Rallon would be one of the only bikes that I would consider at this point in time as a potential replacement for my own Yeti SB150. I really did enjoy it that much, and I could see myself having one at some point in the future if I was able to get my hands on a frame or potentially a full build, depending on what that price might be. Well, I really hope you like this look at the 2019 Orbea Rallon, and if you have the opportunity to get on one or find one on a demo, or if you're down in Arizona, go check out the guys at Trail Sports, or if you're here on the island, go see Grant down at Couch and Cycles. He's our local dealer. If you like what I'm doing here, think about hitting the subscribe and the like button. Leave me a comment down below and come and find me on Instagram. And as always, thanks again for watching. Now let's go hit the trails.